Welcome back to the Drain Plug Podcast. This episode is sponsored by tbnation.net. Visit tbnation.net for all your Jon Boat needs, whether that be EVA foam, dry hatches, electrical outboards,
electrical
lithium
outboards,
batteries,
lithium batteries,
all of the things. Please visit tbnation.net. And we got another glorious episode for you guys today.
Yep, we got a hot topic and we got hot bourbon.
We got a hot bourbon and a hot topic.
Ryan's super excited about tonight.
This is going to be one of my favorite episodes simply because of the bourbon. I am a E.H. Taylor fiend.
You might be the only person I know that talks about E.H. Taylor more than you talk about boats.
I love it. It is amazing. For whatever reason, this bourbon holds a special place in my heart.
And it would not be here if it wasn't for one of our super awesome customers. I'm not going to throw him out here for the whole world to know, but you know who you are. We appreciate the E.H. Taylor small batch that's sitting over here.
Yep.
One of our customers that we had to do some warranty work with e-propulsion sent us that, and he was super grateful for his level of customer service that he received, and he thought we deserved a special treat.
And that is insane. That is very kind. I was wondering why FedEx was making me show them my ID.
Yeah.
When they dropped it off, I was like, dude, is this a new policy or something? Like,
Yeah.
do I need to copy just have it? I don't know. But
Well, I didn't know that it was coming. Like, he didn't say anything. It just showed up, and
Yeah.
you called me, and you were like, somebody just delivered some bourbon here. And I'm like, what?
no, I didn't say that because I didn't open it.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
But
And I came in.
I was like, dude, I don't know. We got this weird package, and I had to show my ID for it, but it's got your name on it, so I didn't want to mess
Yes,
with it.
I opened it up, and I was like, where the hell did this come from?
You son of a...
And all the note said was like, thanks for your help.
That was he sent you the small batch,
Yeah.
and then
I went searching for the single barrel, which is
Yeah.
the other one that we have
You
over here. That's
came
what we're going to be
across
doing. We're going to be small batch versus single barrel tonight.
and I have a single barrel as well. Just haven't opened it, so I've never even tasted the single barrel before.
All right, so I have taken a little sippy sip out
Yeah.
of both of these just to try them and see what I think.
Okay.
I am traditionally not a Buffalo Trace fan.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I don't like it. I just don't like the hype and the price point and having to go stand in line for 47 hours in the middle of the night and camp out like you're at Best Buy in 1996 trying to get a TV on Black Friday.
You're not a bourbon sheep.
No, I'm not. So I have tried both of them, but this is going to be my first actual sit-down pour I've had of them to try them both. And you got fanboy over here and non-fanboy, so you're going to get two totally different opinions.
We don't see the single barrel very much, so I'm very excited to taste these, especially side by side.
Yeah. So let's talk about price real quick, because traditionally, even though they are hard to find, if you can find them, you wind up paying a lot more than their retail price or their MSRP is.
Correct.
What do you traditionally see the small batch go for?
Small batch, if I get at one of those raffles I stand in line for hours and paid hundreds of dollars for just to be able to stand there,
Yeah.
I can get it for $50.
Okay.
$49.99. I
Okay.
think that's an average retail cost on that bottle.
I've seen it in stores anywhere from 80 all the way up to like $150 a bottle.
So there's a store that I know of right now that I could go to and know that it's going to be on the shelf and get it for 80, which I love that bottle so much I pay 80 for it too. So
Okay. Now, what about the single barrel? That's the one I have actually never seen one in the wild until I bought that one.
yeah, I actually got my single barrel from a guy that's very close to the owner of one of the liquor stores. So I had no connection with that. He's like, hey, I can get you one if you want. I was like, how much is it? He's like, $100. He probably took 20 of it from me, which is totally fine. But I paid $100 for mine.
The retail on them's like what, like 69,
It's like 69,
70 bucks, something like that.
70, or might be 79.99. It's somewhere in there, yeah.
All right. So when I've seen them, they've been on the internet, and they've been $200 or more dollars.
Yeah.
I got this one for $150.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Not
I mean,
bad. I did have to drive all the way to Kentucky to find it.
it's still a lot of money, but that's not. You didn't get totally screwed, I don't think.
Well, they wanted $188 for it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I told the lady behind the cash register that I was from Kenya, and that we weren't allowed to import bourbon into my home country. And this would be my only opportunity in my entire life to taste a single barrel E.H. Taylor. And she just looked at me with this blank stare, and she was like, "You don't look like you're from Kenya." And I was like, "Oh, my Kenya, Georgia." That's what I meant. Because I was in Kentucky when I bought it. And she was like,
Yeah, okay,
I was
still
like,
not buying it.
What can you do for me? Can you help me out here a little bit? It's the first time I've ever seen.
You pulled that card, huh?
I did. I got it for $150. So I don't know if that'll work everywhere. You can try the Kenya story.
Yeah, I wouldn't suggest it, but I mean, yeah, you could. Yeah.
So our topic for tonight is kind of a kayak versus Jon Boat, pros and cons, arguments for or against either one, what our experience with them is, because it is a hot topic when people, especially when they're first getting into it, they're like, well, should I go the kayak route or should I go the Jon Boat route?
And the market right now is in this really weird spot because you got a whole lot of new kayaks,
Yes.
not very many new boats, tiny boats. I would suggest anything in the smaller realm, right?
Aluminum specifically.
Aluminum smaller boats. Nothing really new is kind of coming out. It's not.
Nah.
Everything's kind of is what it is. You're gonna get what you're gonna get. But the kayak scene has just exploded, and you have
It's
so
super
many more
popular.
mods. It's popular in regions too, like North Georgia. Kayaks are huge.
Yes.
You come down here towards the mid-state, lower end of North Georgia, and no one could give a crap less about a kayak.
And then you go just a few hours south of us, and like right as you're going into Florida, it's like kayak country.
Right, but then even before then, people are like, why the hell would you
Why would you
paddle?
want a kayak?
Like,
Yeah.
why get you a motor, bud? But
And motorized kayaks are quickly becoming a hot topic
yeah,
lately.
I mean, and that's kind of what I wanted to bring up in this is like, at what point should you be in a boat? Two, I mean, I'm starting to not really see much of a price difference between a boat and a kayak.
Yeah.
Especially with the electronics and everything that you're putting on them these days. And I mean, you got to at this point you got to start trailering the kayak.
Yeah.
Which I get, right? But just get a boat, dude. I mean, it's going to be on, because in my opinion, the kayak is like, hey, I got to throw something in the bed of the truck.
Yeah.
I got to get somewhere skinny, crawling through a bunch of places, got to drag this thing around everywhere. But what's the point of that if you got to put it in at a boat ramp,
Well, yeah, and so the big overall question that we're going to answer by the end of this is when you are either getting into boating or fishing and you're looking to get out on the water and your first purchase is going to be a Jon Boat or a kayak. Those are your two choices.
Right.
Which way should you go? And hopefully we're going to offer you some advice from our experience being both kayakers and Jon Boaters, because we've had both and we've fished out of both. That's our overall goal with this is to answer. But let me get your opinion on this first, and then I'll kind of go with mine. When it comes to entry-level price point, when you're talking about Jon Boat versus kayak, how do you feel about it? Like from your experience, because I know you've started out with a cheap kayak, you've also started out with a cheap Jon Boat, and then you've been around a lot of more expensive kayaks and you've upgraded. So how do you feel about that?
I'm still a boat guy.
Okay.
100% a boat guy. The main reason for that is because I like fishing for bass.
Okay.
And I feel like I can cast. I can see everything a little bit better. I'm more comfortable standing up in the boat than I am sitting in the kayak.
Okay.
You with the boat, you got the trolling motor,
Yeah.
which I know you do have in most kayaks now. None of my kayaks have ever had a trolling motor, but for me, it's more practical, makes more sense to just be in some type of boat.
Okay.
But I do have a purpose for kayaks in my life.
And what is that?
When it gets really hot
Okay.
here in Georgia, like too hot to even be out on the lake,
Yeah.
take the kayak to the river, right? Catch some shoal bass. You're up there, it's a little cooler, the water's cooler. You can get in the water, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah. I wouldn't want to get out on the lake right now.
It's going to feel nice. So I do have a spot for kayaks in my life, but it's completely different it's because I literally can't get a boat in there.
Yeah. Before we jump into the price point aspect of it, my personal opinion is it's 100% location based,
Right.
whether I would go one way or the other. I got into kayak fishing when I was still bass fishing. For those of y'all who do not know, I was a bass fisherman in my previous life.
You were once a man.
Yeah, if you want to say that. Remind me, I'll tell you a story here in a second. But anyways, so I got into kayak bass fishing because of locations. I got tired of going to lakes where there was jet skiers and pleasure boaters and wake boaters and all them people that the Alabama Bass Council talk about with the wake boats.
Yeah.
I got tired of just being around people all the time. And I got to the feeling like some of my local lakes, like I fished Jackson a lot. I had two trains of thought when I went out there in my boat. I said, is every fish at every stump I go to going to know what was on sale at Bass Pro Shop last weekend because they've seen that many lures this week already?
Right.
My other thing was, am I going to have to wait in line to fish the spot that I want to fish?
Yeah.
Because you had some hot spots where you had like docks that were on shallow points that rolled off into deep water.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of fish moving up from deep to shallow to feed at certain parts of the day.
Right.
And it would go back deeper. And those spots were few and far between. And a lot of times I would get there and there would be 2 or 3 guys right next to each other, one fishing and one waiting, or another one kind of fishing off to one side, or they'd be kind of going all over each other. And I got tired of being around people. So my idea was, well, if I get a kayak, I can go up into the rivers where it's too shallow to take a boat, and I can, one, be away from people, but also I can get to some more fish that aren't as pressured.
Right.
And that's exactly what kayaking got me into was, and I found out very quickly that you could probably throw a piece of bubble gum in some of these really shallow rivers around here in Georgia and catch anything because some of these fish had never seen a lure before.
I'll tell you this, like, man, you go out on the boat and you're like, man, I hope I do good and catch a bunch of fish today. Mm-hmm. I've never had that concern when I've gotten in the kayak.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I felt like I could go more places that were inaccessible to boats.
Yeah.
Even, like, there's some shallow coves in some of the places that we fish in some of the lakes that you just can't get to the backside of, like, lay down trees and log jams and stuff like that easily in a boat, but you can in a kayak because you can float right up to it. You can grab a tree and kind of move it out of your way to float around it. And you could also get up into trees that you wouldn't normally want to in your boat because you're going to have, stuff all over you and spiders getting in the boat. But I can go around all that stuff in a kayak and kind of sneak in on the backside of it.
Yep.
So that was kind of what brought me into kayaking in the first place. It wasn't a comfort thing. It wasn't a price point thing. It was a location thing. I was trying to get away from people and find more fish, but specifically less pressured fish. Yep. Now, when you talk about the price point game, I'm pretty sure me and you are both the same in this. I started out with a really, really cheap kayak. My first kayak was a Perception Pescador. I bought it from, I think, Academy when it was on sale, and I paid like $400 for it. It was super thin, like not very wide.
Yeah.
It tracked great. It was very fast, but man, that thing was unstable.
Yeah.
I flipped that kayak more than any other kayak I've ever owned.
Oh gosh.
There wasn't a lot of storage room. Because when I go kayaking, I like to float. Like I put in one spot, float down to my takeout spot, and there wasn't a lot of room for me to take like a grill so that I could cook lunch because I knew it was going to be in water for 10 hours that day. I couldn't take as much tackle with me. There wasn't a whole lot of like accessories like rod holders and stuff like that because it was a pretty featureless kayak.
Right.
And you started out on a cheap one. What was your first one?
Freaking Sun Dolphin, dude. Like,
did you get a Tractor Supply or Bass Pro?
I'm gonna be honest. I think I got them at Walmart.
Walmart, yeah. I forgot to sell them.
I think it was I bought 2 of them, and they're junk. I mean, they would fill up with water.
Yeah.
They very uncomfortable. It had the seat. It was a padded seat, but it was like
it was molded,
riveted into the molded portion of the seat area, and then the back was just two straps and a like a half-ass plastic back to it.
My Pescador was like that. My Perception was. And it wasn't comfortable. I couldn't sit in it for very long.
No.
And being on a river that's shallow, it was okay because a lot of times when I would get in these long, straight sections of the river, I mean, it's like 6 to 12 inches deep.
Right.
There wasn't really any fish in there anyway, so I was kind of paddling through those. But if I got tired, I could just hop out of the kayak, and I'm only in, knee-deep water. It wasn't that big of a deal. But as I got further along in my kayaking experience, I found out that comfort means like the difference between an okay day of fishing and an amazing day of fishing.
Yes.
So I ended up upgrading. What did you end up upgrading to?
I went with the Ascend. What was it? FS10, I believe, is what it's called.
The Bass Pro Shop
Yeah,
kayak.
it's got a separate like sit on type seat,
Yeah.
but it's still enclosed, like almost like my feet go up underneath not the deck, but the top of the kayak.
Yeah. So it's almost like a sit-in fishing style.
It's a sit-in fishing style kayak, and I absolutely love it.
Good.
I mean, it's just a little heavy.
Yeah.
It's a little thick, but man, it was like $400.
Yeah.
Maybe 500, and I can carry a lot of crap in it.
Now,
it takes the waves good. It tracks okay.
weight-wise, how is it?
What do you mean?
Like, is it heavy? Is it a heavy kayak?
It's heavy.
Like, what do you
It's
know what the weight
heavier.
is? Like 80, 90 pounds?
No, it ain't like that. I think it's a little over 50. Maybe
Okay, that's not
tapping
terrible.
60. So it's not terrible, but once you start putting crap in it,
Then, yeah, they get heavy quick.
then it gets really heavy. But it's a noticeable difference between mine and my fiance. So
Yeah. But comfort-wise, you feel
10 times better.
10 times better. Are you able to stand up in that one?
No.
No, because it's not wide enough, or you just don't feel comfortable doing it?
Well, there's really nowhere to stand in it.
Oh, because it's a sit-in. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. It's not
so-
a sit on top.
It's not. That's the downfall. So when I'm going down the river, we usually get to a shallow, rocky, shoaly area.
Mm-hmm.
Get out of the kayak and kind of walk around and fish right there
For shoal
instead
bass.
of fishing out of the kayak.
Yeah.
So that's typically what we do.
Now, the one I upgraded to, and the only reason I upgraded from the Pescador was for comfort. Like, I just could not sit in that kayak for more than about... At the first part of the day, I could make it about an hour, but then I had to get out because I was hurting, especially on my lower back, because it had that pad like yours with the straps on it, and it was just enough to support my lower back, but you had to be sitting like perfectly upright. And then after a little while, you just like, as you start to slouch, it just hurts more and more and more.
It's amazing how those kayaks pinpoint this really bad spot in your lower back.
Yes.
It's the same spot, and if it's in a bad kayak, you're going to feel it in that same area.
Yep.
And it don't take long.
And that was literally my only reason for upgrading. I would have been okay with that cheap kayak. I could have dealt with the flipping over, because the more I used it, the more I got used to it.
Right.
But I also quickly learned that you don't put anything in a kayak that you don't care about losing.
Right.
Because I lost some really nice stuff,
Yeah.
and it made me mad. I lost a really nice Yeti cup. I lost a Spyderco knife that cost me over $100.
Ooh.
I lost 4 or 5 brand new bait casting rod and reels.
Ouch.
One of them is still in a tree in the South River if anybody wants to go get it.
You got to make your way through all the basketballs.
Yeah, exactly. But so when I was searching for a new kayak to upgrade, that comfort was my only thing.
Right.
I didn't really care so much about standing up, because most of the river fishing I was doing, it was moving, and I didn't want to be standing up anyways.
It's not a smart idea.
But
here.
comfort was what I was looking for. So I ended up going with a Vibe.
Okay.
And I loved it. I hated that I had to get rid of it, but it was at the end of its whole life. I used it for about 5 years, and it was to the point where I was getting dangerously close to wearing through the bottom of the hull, especially on like the Okmulgee, where there's a lot of rocks that I had to drag it over. But it was hands down most comfortable kayak I've ever sat in. And I've sat in the Ascend sit on tops before.
Yep.
And I had another buddy who's got another Vibe too. I had the 13.5 Seaghost.
Oh, wow. So real long one.
It was long. Now, my big complaint with it had everything I wanted.
Yeah.
You could stand up in it. I'm not real nimble. As we were joking earlier, I got the balance of like a newborn baby giraffe.
Right.
I'm not super nimble, but I could stand up in it. In moving water, it was a little sketchy.
Yeah.
But other people stood up in it, and they didn't have any problems. The seat was amazing. The seat was built kind of like those Millennium boat seats.
Oh,
It
really?
was very similar style. Had the aluminum frame with that like zero gravity fabric or whatever in
Yeah.
it, to where it just kind of stretched with you.
Yeah.
I could sit in that thing all day long and never had any issues. The only thing it didn't do at the time was swivel. It was it was a sit
Stationary.
forward, but it had a low, middle, and high.
Okay.
So I could adjust where I wanted to sit. Once I got it figured out, like I like the high position, and I just stayed in that position all the time. But everything I gained, I lost something in return. The pescador I had was kind of like your sun dolphin. Was lightweight. It was like 50, 60 pounds. The Sea Ghost was like 110 pounds dry.
You're kidding.
Nothing else in the boat. It was dry. 110 pounds. It was a heavy, heavy boat.
That's disgusting.
Getting it in and out of anywhere by myself was pretty much impossible. I had to have somebody with me. And that's when I really started focusing on float trips. My buddy that I fished with at the time, we were both big into bass fishing and kayaks. He had a 13.5-foot Sea Ghost just like I did, but most of the time he brought his 10.5 because it was just easier to get in and out of.
Yeah.
And by the time you put a kayak crate full of lures, 2 rods, a cooler, some charcoal to cook lunch with and stuff like that, and that thing weighed like insanely heavy. And I couldn't put wheels on it because everywhere we launched was like on the side of the road or under a bridge.
Yeah, I've been with you one time. It was like crawling through the forest to get to the water. I was like, dude.
Well, that was actually when we went down the South River.
Yeah.
The upper part near Panola Mountain State Park.
Yeah.
It's never easy to put them in where I wanted to go fish at. So I lost the weight advantage.
Yeah.
I gained a lot of space, but within that space, I got a lot more opportunities for leaks. And my front hatch was, I guess because I left it in my truck a lot, it got some sun damage to it, and the edges of it started to warp up a little bit.
Yeah.
And it was just enough to where when we went through the rapids, like especially at the Old Mogi, when I go through some of the shoals down there, I would almost always take on water. Which not, when you're in a kayak, it's not a big deal. You just make sure everything that you have that's important is in a dry bag.
Most of them are self-bailing.
Most of them are self-bailing.
That's the downfall to mine, too.
Yeah, but when mine took on water, it sat lower in the water, and it didn't track very well. It tracked great when it was lighter and it was sitting up higher.
Yeah.
But you take on water and you put a whole bunch of weight in it, it just seemed like the lower you got, the more it wanted to turn in the wind. I did not like that. Price was the other big factor in that. It hurt my soul to spend as much money as that kayak goes for.
Yeah.
The only reason that I bought it is at the time, Vibe was located here in Georgia, and they used to sell their scratch and dent kayaks.
Yeah.
And if it wouldn't have been for that scratch and dent sale, I never would have spent $1,300 on that kayak.
Yeah.
I still wound up spending about $800, and I spent even more than that upgrading it and doing some things to it to make it towards my liking.
Right.
But it was comfortable.
Yeah.
That was my big factor.
Yeah. That comfort you'll pay for, but sometimes it's just worth it.
Yes, it is. And that's one thing to keep in mind when we talk about this whole price point thing is you can spend some crazy money on a nice kayak.
Yeah.
The kayak market, nowadays, not uncommon to see a kayak for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for a bare bones kayak.
A hole in a seat.
Just a hole in a seat. And then you start adding in pedal drives and electric motors that are dropping in and trolling motors and graphs and everything. You can...
Even the paddles get freaking expensive.
That was one thing I splurged on.
Yeah.
I bought one of the carbon fiber, I think it's called the Angler Ace or something like that.
Right.
It was a huge weight savings, and I really liked the paddle, but
Yeah.
I'm glad I only had to buy it once because I think it was like $200-something when I got it.
Ouch.
Worth every penny, but it's another cost that people don't factor in when they get a kayak because you get most of the time you get a free paddle with them.
Yeah.
Those paddles suck.
They do suck.
They're heavy.
Yeah.
They're not very ergonomic. Like after a while, your hand is just like they hurt.
Most of them are too short.
Yep. And I was lucky doing float trips that I didn't do a lot of paddling. Most of my paddling was corrective.
Right. Yeah.
You get turned sideways on a section that you didn't really
Here
want to
comes
be.
that shoal.
Yep. You need to straighten back up. Or like a lot of times I would actually turn around backwards so that I could fish upstream from where I was at so that I could make my baits swim downstream.
Yeah.
And you'd get like closer to the shoals and then the water start moving a little bit faster than you expected. You got to quickly turn around. Yeah. Doing that with a big, heavy paddle that's not very, what's the word, water dynamic or doesn't grab water very well.
Yeah.
That's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. And it makes you work harder too.
It does. It'll wear you out. But for those who are doing like lake style stuff, like I almost wouldn't go kayaking unless I had a good paddle.
I wouldn't go kayaking in a lake, period.
Why not?
Get a boat, dude. Quit pissing people off. Get a boat. I mean, just. Oh man, that drives me nuts.
Your experience with kayakers and lakes has been pretty negative. What are some of the things that you've seen?
Dude, the biggest one that everyone experiences from, well, I don't know. I don't even want to put that in that same category, right? The regular lounger or person out on the water for the day in a kayak that cuts in front of you in the bank or you in your fishing spot.
Yeah.
But I guess that's really not the people that we're talking about right now. We're talking about the guys using their kayak for fishing, right?
Yeah.
My biggest issue with them is the boat ramp itself. Usually on the water, I don't have.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll slow down for them. You know, if I start getting kind of close, I don't want to blow someone out with some wake. But they just hog up the boat ramp.
Yeah.
And just have no common sense, no courtesy, no nothing. They're just got their crap scattered all over the place.
Well, and it does take some time to set up a kayak for fishing, especially if you got a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and I understand that, but it's like, bro, can you keep it to the corner, to the side? Like, why do you need all 3 lanes of this boat ramp?
The ones I hate the worst is when they're in a pickup truck and they back down to put their kayak in, and they get the kayak out of the truck, and they just leave the truck there while they're slowly but steadily taking one. Like, I got my bag of Cheez-Its. They go put that in the boat, and then they go grab one fishing pole, and then they walk back to the
I would rather you leave your truck at the boat ramp, like blocking everybody, because at least they know you're there, right? It's the guys that drop everything off, move the truck, and then they're just like hanging out right there, and I'm like, dude, all right, you might as well pull it over to the bank right there. Yeah. Just do your thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If you're gonna do that, leave the truck there. That's fine with me.
Now, I will tell you, as much as boat people can't stand kayakers can't stand boat people.
Well, then get off the lake. I don't know what to tell you, bud. It's called a boat ramp, not a kayak ramp.
I know. Well, it's not that. It's, you get these guys that'll pull up into a shallow cove or something where you got kayakers like way back in the back and they're enjoying the nice calm water. And then you get somebody in a 20-foot Phoenix that comes roaring in there with a 225 at, 40, 50 miles an hour, and then they slam it down.
It ain't even got to be that.
And then you're sitting here doing this for 5 minutes in your kayak, just rocking and rolling, waiting for those wakes to go away.
The funniest thing is when these people get their first kayak and they're like, oh, man, I'm going to go to this electric-only lake where it's real quiet.
No.
Soft water. And then some dude like Troy blows by with 275 horsepower electric outboards.
Yep.
And just big old wake and rooster tail and everything. Yep. And they're like, what in the God's name is that?
So we're talking about the price aspect of Jon Boats versus kayak. I'm starting to feel that E.H. Taylor. Pretty good stuff. Jon Boats versus kayak when it comes to the pricing thing. The way that I look at it is the kayak is the down payment on all the crap that you're going to buy to put in that kayak to make it fishable and comfortable.
Yes.
With a boat, that's still semi-true, but not as much. How do you feel about that?
My first thought goes to resale value.
Okay.
I don't know what that is with kayaks. But for boats, it's not very great.
No, it's not. Well, and kayaks, it just really depends on the use. For some reason, and I dealt with this when I sold my kayak, both of them. For some reason, people have this thing about scratches on kayaks. Like, you get a scratch on it, they're like, oh, my God, that just, completely diminishes the value. It takes some pretty hard use to really wear through a kayak.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is just more people that they're getting a new kayak to them. They just want to look good.
Yeah, exactly. Generally, I don't see kayaks hold their value as well as boats do. Now, I have seen some tricked out ones that people are asking way too much money for.
Yeah, but they stay on Facebook Marketplace for 3 years.
They do. And they got more money invested in all the stuff than they do the actual kayak. And that's what you get. You get a lot of people like, hey, I don't want all the stuff. Yeah, I just want the kayak.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of people don't want to part with it. They just want to sell it all at one piece and be done with it.
Yeah.
But as far as getting into a kayak, level of entry for a decent sit on top or sit in fishing kayak is a little bit cheaper than your average Jon Boat on the small side. When you go to a bigger size Jon Boat, the cost can be quite a bit more.
Let's talk about boats.
Go ahead.
You want to try the single barrel? Mm-hmm. Or you want to wait?
Bring it on over here. All right. So while you're pouring this, do you know if there's is there a story behind E.H. Taylor? Or is there any significant history to it?
Yeah, dude, it's on the freaking bottle.
Oh, is it? Yeah. I'm assuming you've read it 47 times and you know it by heart by now.
I've only got it memorized.
You got it memorized? Yeah. 4 7 years ago.
I mean, I stare at the bottle every night. So he was a real colonel. I know that.
Like Kentucky Fried Chicken Colonel? No, not that kind. Oh, darn.
Maybe.
This one's 100 proof too.
Yes. Same proof point.
So with the small batch, I got a sweet wood flavor, a lot of vanilla, and I don't want to say it's cherry, but it's like that Dr. Peppery type soda drink kind of note. It's almost cherry, but it's not cherry.
Okay.
But it's there. Overall, well-rounded, good sipper. To me, it drinks like 100 proof.
Yeah.
It's like you can tell it's 100 proof. It's got a slight, just a slight astringency to it, to where I can smell it, but I can also taste it just a little bit. You get it on the back end of the finish just a little bit. Aside from that, I mean, it's a good pour.
I really like mine with a little bit of ice too.
Really,
it changes it a lot.
I'm not an ice fan.
Yeah,
I'm not ice baby.
I do like the ice in it though.
Yeah. Overall, not bad. This is your go-to though.
That's my go-to.
This is what you like.
100%.
All right. So first impressions of the single barrel.
I'm not getting the alcohol scent on it as strong.
No.
I feel like my first smell of it, it was a lot sweeter than what I'm getting off of it now.
Okay.
I don't know, man. I can't tell much of a difference scent wise.
To me, it smells the same on the nose. It's just more enhanced. I definitely pick up more of that sweet wood, that sweet oak flavor.
Yeah.
I get a lot more vanilla on this one. I don't get any of that kind of caramelly type sweet notes. Just vanilla.
The other one was much more caramel.
But this one, I definitely like. It has a cherry note to it. It's like a candied, drinky type cherry note, almost like not a high C cherry or a Kool-Aid cherry, but almost like a cherry Dr. Pepper or something like that. I get that. You know how Dr. Pepper, when you drink it, it's got that like, ooh, that's cherry, that's cola, that's something else, that's like a cream soda-y type. It kind of gives me that vibe.
The 23 flavors.
Yeah, it's like it's a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's really hard to pinpoint something.
I've taken one sip of this, and I think it's a little bit easier to drink than that small batch.
I think the flavor profile is better.
It's not much better, though.
No. It's the same, but better. That's how I look at it. It's the same, but just like one little notch up.
Yeah, it's not $100 better.
No, God, no. Nothing Buffalo Traces, sorry.
I don't know, man. You ever had that Blanton's?
Yes, I have. It's definitely not worth its price.
That stuff is garbage.
So on to the Jon Boats and the pricing of Jon Boats and getting into a Jon Boat.
Okay.
What do you feel about the barrier of entry and the comparison between the Jon Boat getting into it for your first boat versus a kayak?
I think it's cheaper because I don't think you need as much crap to feel comfortable in a Jon Boat. Does that make sense?
You're going to spend most of your time standing up anyways, or sitting down in a nice, comfortable boat seat.
Exactly. You don't need an oar, so you don't need like paddle holders or anything like that.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have a trolling motor on there with a battery, which even that, I mean, you're in what, $250, maybe $300.
You're in it for about the price of a really good paddle. So cost comparison wise, you're not. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but you can get a cheap lithium battery off of Amazon and a cheap trolling motor.
Even if you go with a lead acid one, you ain't going to be in there much. I don't know. I just, because all you need is the boat, a battery, and a trolling motor.
Yeah.
Realistically, that's all you need.
And if you want to sit down, a seat. Now, we'll say this.
Well, when you're talking about the Jon Boat thing, I'm thinking of like the tracker topper, which is already going to have the bench seats in it.
Which are not comfortable to sit on.
But, no, they're not. But it's more comfortable than sitting in a kayak seat.
Yeah.
So
I think your cheap, run-of-the-mill Walmart, Academy, Amazon boat seats
yeah,
are far and above better than your cheap molded-in kayak seat. So, like,
Yeah.
to me, that's already a big step up in comfort if you're planning on sitting.
yeah,
Or if you're bringing a passenger with you or somebody that's going to fish with you that is going to be sitting the entire time.
yeah.
You're not going to get that level of
Well,
comfort
then
in a kayak.
there's the other thing. You can bring somebody with you.
Yes. They don't have to have their own kayak. Or you don't have to spend mega bucks on a tandem kayak.
Correct.
Tandem kayaks are crazy expensive.
And so
And they're very limited on space.
just seems more practical. You're not like, you're probably going to have a trailer with it.
Yes.
So ease of mobility is a plus.
Now, for the guys that are going to be doing the 12 and 1436 tracker toppers, putting them in the back of their pickup truck,
Yeah.
a 14-foot, 36-inch bottom Jon Boat is not much heavier than my Sea Ghost was.
This is true.
They're right in that like 100 to, depending on which model you go with and how
Right.
much wet foam it's got in it.
Yeah.
150-pound range is pretty average. It took 2 people to move my 13-foot kayak. It takes 2 people to move a 14-foot Jon Boat.
Yeah.
If you had wheels on the back of the Jon Boat, like the Railblaza Sea Tug wheels that are fold down, or even I've seen people put kayak carts on the back of Jon Boats to get them in and out of the river,
Yeah.
or in and out of small ponds and stuff like that. It's not much different than hauling around a 12 or 13 or 14-foot kayak.
Well, I mean, you got to think most kayaks now are about that 36-inch width, too, at the bottom.
A lot of them are, because they're
Your
going
Hobies for
more
sure
towards
are.
standing up like you
Yeah.
do in a boat.
I mean, dude, it's just... I don't know. It comes down to preference, I guess. I feel safer in a boat. I'll tell you that. Just putting
Yeah.
it, let's just say on a lake environment, I
Yeah.
feel safer in the Jon Boat.
I'm kind of 50-50. When I first started out, I did not feel safe in my kayak.
Yeah.
Flipping it as many times as I did and going through as many rapids as I did and doing some really dumb stuff like going over some drop-offs that I probably shouldn't have while I
Right.
was still in the kayak. Now that I've done it, I feel a lot more comfortable with a kayak than I did when I first started. And the fact that even if they do take on water, they usually generally still float
Right.
makes me feel a little bit better in moving water. Lake, either one. I could take either one. It doesn't bother me
Yeah.
as far as safety goes. Now, the only downside to a kayak is unless you want to do some extreme mods, you ain't putting a bilge pump in a kayak.
No.
So if you do get in that rainy situation and you have a kayak that leaks like mine was, and it's going to take on a lot of water,
It's going to do it much faster.
you better have one of those hand bilge pumps, the little pumpy ones that look like an air pump. You're gonna need one of those because you will get water in your kayak, especially if you go to places with rapids, little waves, stuff like that. Because the braver you get, the dumber stuff you will do with it.
Yeah.
As far as accessories and outfitting, I feel like you have to spend more money to accessorize and customize a kayak than you do a boat. Take a fish finder, for instance.
Yeah.
Unless you buy a higher end, I won't even say higher end, but like a mid-level to high-end kayak that has a place for a transducer, it has a place for a battery, and it has wire management and stuff for a fish finder,
Yeah.
you're going to have to spend money on track attachments to mount your transducer.
Yeah.
You're going to have to come up with some way to manage all those wires. You're going to have to fit some kind of battery in there, which usually more than likely is going to lead you to lithium.
Yeah.
Because you got to have the lightweight and smaller size, which is more expensive.
Yeah.
And also you got to come up with some kind of mounting solution that's easily removable because you're going to have to take the entire thing off of your kayak at some point to get in and out of your house, your car, your garage, whatever.
Right.
With a Jon Boat, it's like 2 self-tapping screws on the front deck. Zip, zip. You run the wire to the back, hanging off the back, 2 self-tapping screws, put the transducer in, and you're done.
Yeah.
So you can easily spend $50, $100, $200 in addition to your fish finder or your graph just to put it on your kayak and make it removable than Jon Boat.
Right.
Same thing with rod holders. You can take a Scotty mount rod holder or a Railblaza style rod holder and just slap it in your kayak because most of them now are built for it.
Yeah.
In a Jon Boat, it's the exact opposite. Most of them are not built for it, so you have to put those kind of mounts in there, you have to come up with some kind of mounting solution. And unless you're lucky enough to spend a little bit more money and get one of those kayak or a Jon Boat that has a track system in it.
Right.
But then you still got to buy the attachments to put a Scotty rod holder in there, or a Railblazer rod holder in there, or a Yak Attack, or whatever it is.
It ain't going to come with it.
No, it's not.
I mean, that would put you up to probably that Tracker Grizzly is probably the first one with a track system in it.
Yes.
In the gunnel.
Yep. I don't think any of the other ones do.
I don't think none of them do. I mean, most of your other ones are just bare bones,
Yeah, you got to get into like an all weld
Yeah.
or a what's the other one? G3
Might
to
have,
get.
I don't even think all the G3s have T-tracks in them.
Yeah, but even hell, the cheapest G3 is like the price of a Hobie.
Yeah.
They ain't cheap
Yeah. Without a trailer.
without a trailer, and you still got the expense of a trailer.
Still go buy the trailer.
Yeah, oh, God. Now you can do some budget stuff to do like a small 14-foot boat on like a Harbor Freight style trailer, but it's still going to cost you money.
Yep.
And you can still truck bed it, but when you start accessorizing a Jon Boat, it becomes less truck beddable,
Yes.
and you kind of get stuck on that trailer.
Yeah. Because adding weight to a Jon Boat is much easier to do.
Yes, because you got more storage room and it's easier to put stuff in it, and you want to put it has a higher no, that's that,
probably
yeah. I was
don't.
just about to say something really stupid, but generally kayaks have a pretty hefty weight rating.
Man, those plastic boats in general seem to have a higher weight rating than a lot of the aluminum boats.
Mm-hmm. I think a 1436 is rated for like what 400 or 500 pounds.
Dude, it's like 325, like something like that.
Overall, like with a motor and everything.
Yeah.
So by the time you're done, you're down to like 250, 300 pounds. Well, that Vibe kayak I had was rated at 500.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. That is the downfall to the aluminum. Now, caveat to that would be a deep V-hull style boat in that same size.
Yes.
So, like your 12-foot deep Vs, even those can carry way more weight than a 1436 tracker topper.
Yes.
So, but that's all about displacement. That hull is much wider, rounded out.
Yeah.
It can handle and take more weight.
And that's going to be kind of a geographic thing.
Yes.
Because like you come here to central South Georgia, there ain't no deep Vs.
No.
Nobody got one.
It's just
You're not going to find one.
It's not extremely useful around here.
No.
But where Mike's at, out in Arizona,
You can't find a flat bottom.
I think the last thing I would do is go out on Havasu with a flat bottom boat.
Yeah. But then you go to North Georgia, like Lake Lanier, you're going to find a mix of both, but you're more likely to
more of those
find
flat bottoms.
Yeah, it's on the used market though. Places like where Mike lives, huge lakes like Lanier and stuff like that. Those places you're going to find those deep V's. You live up north, Great Lakes, South Dakota, deep V's up there for days.
Yeah,
you ain't gonna find no flat bottoms. They're gonna be you might find some, but they're gonna be fewer and far between.
Yeah, or at the bottom of the lake.
Or at the bottom of the lake. That's a good point. So overall price wise, when you're getting into a Jon Boat, truck bed and just you're buying the boat itself and accessorizing it to be fishable,
Right.
you find it cheaper overall than a kayak.
I do.
You do.
I think I've spent more money starting up into a kayak than I have a Jon Boat.
Okay, so let's do this. You're getting into a Jon Boat for the first time.
Yeah.
You found one on Marketplace for a decent price. I'd say $400 or $500 is a good price these days. It's hard to find them at that price anymore, but you find you a good $400 or $500 Jon Boat. No trailer. You're gonna put this in the bed of your truck.
Okay.
You're brand new into boating. What kind of money are you gonna spend? Like, what's the immediate things, and then go on from there to your customization. What makes it more fishable, more comfortable on down the road that you're saving money for?
First thing would be a trolling motor and a battery.
Yep.
I think if I really wanted to get out, that's all I would start with. And I'd probably rock that for a while till my next paycheck.
Okay.
After that, I don't know. I mean, that's what led me here, though, was the decks. I probably would have started decking the thing out.
Okay. And you got two ways you can go with that: either plywood or aluminum.
Probably would have been wood back then.
And wood's expensive now, so.
Yeah.
But you got that added weight that you got to worry about.
Right. Oh, yeah, we're doing a truck bed version, huh?
Yep.
Damn. Well, in that case, I think I'd start exploring, like, seat options.
Okay.
Finding a way to keep the interior of the boat cooler throughout the day. So probably, like, EVA foam, something like that.
Something.
And a way to make the floor flat.
Yeah.
Those would be my top things.
I'm 100% with you on the flat floor. I would go
So
flat floor before I did anything.
You look at it, it's you're doing the same thing. You're trying to make it comfortable. But, I mean, I think you could do that much cheaper in a Jon Boat than you could a kayak. So,
yeah. So you break it down. Let's say you got $500 in your boat.
yeah.
And then, like me, I'm going to go Millennium seat or a knockoff Millennium seat.
Right.
Because they've just proven to be super comfortable long term. So you're in it for another $100 there. Plus you got a mount of some type, whether that be a swivel or a pedestal mount. So now you're in it for another $30, $40, $50. So just say you're up to $650 now by the time you buy all the hardware. You got even the cheapest Minn Kota Endura C2 is $100. So now you're in there for $750.
Yeah.
Cheapest lithium battery I think I've ever seen is about $200. So you're in that $950 range now.
Yeah.
For me, my next upgrade after a seat, some type of flat floor, and your basic necessities: a bilge pump, a life jacket to keep in the boat, a backup paddle just in case you need one of those little collapsible ones, something.
Right.
Your whistle, and then stuff like the stuff that you gotta have.
Yeah.
My next upgrade is going to be the auto boat. So the auto boat's going to be your biggest upgrade in fishability because it's going to give you everything that the big boy trolling motors have, that GPS function.
Yeah.
But the ability to remote steer it without having a deck in the boat to run a foot pedal is going to be a game changer for fishing.
Right.
That's going to be, as soon as I buy a seat and get all my necessity stuff, that's the first thing I'm going for is the auto boat. Next thing up would probably be, like you said, the foam or some type of flooring that's comfortable.
Right.
And then I'm going lights.
Yeah.
Especially if you're running, like, because, I think it's summertime. It's really hot. Sometimes it's better to fish in the evening so you're not so hot. But some nighttime fishing's pretty awesome a lot of times, as long as you can stay out of the weather.
Man, I've done a lot of night fishing this year, and I've noticed with the lights being on when it's dark tend to bother me. Like,
really,
it's mainly because I don't really have any on the outside. They're all on the inside.
Yeah.
So when they're on the inside and you're trying to look out, it makes it hard to see past that light barrier.
Yeah.
And that's I just end up turning them off, to be honest with you.
I think for me, something like a simple headlight, whether it be a small 12-inch light bar or something, just so that I can get around at night. Your basic nav lights.
Those are a necessity.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
It's a few small lights on the inside of the boat, like the ones that we have in the Weekend Warrior kits.
Yeah.
Just so that I can see when I'm break off and I'm retying a lure.
Right.
Or I'm going to get something out of the cooler, like I'm going to get a bottle of water or something. I want to be able to see in the boat at night.
Yeah.
But I think more importantly, those outside lights to kind of light up around you while you're fishing make life so much easier. That's one of the upgrades I'm doing on my boat now is red lights on the outside so I can actually see around me.
Red lights, because red lights keep the bugs away.
Yes, I found that out the hard way.
We got to wrap this up, dude.
Well, all right. So before we do, flip back to the kayak side.
Okay.
How's your barrier of entry looking on a kayak? I'll go ahead and throw this out there. The cheap kayaks, I don't recommend them to anybody.
Yeah. The cheapest one, honestly, I would really go for is the one that I have. That Ascend.
What's it
SS10.
going for now?
$499. But
that's not bad,
dude. I mean, you put a crate. It's got a spot for a crate, a spot for a bucket. You can sit inside of it. It's got the comfortable seat.
Yeah.
And it has the little waterproof bag in there for you to keep your phone in. Plus, you can keep crap up on the front.
Yeah.
It's really like, I mean, it's an all-in-one. I mean, and it's a little heavier, but it's not the heaviest.
Yeah. I don't. So my recommendation going into a brand new kayak as a new boater / kayaker, there's two things that I'm going to be looking for. One is going to be a comfortable seat. I will pay extra for a kayak that has a seat that swivels,
Right.
or a nicer like zero gravity style seat, like the Millennium style seat. Feel Free has them now in the Lure series, the Moken. You got Bonafide's got them in their cheaper kayak line. I'm looking for that seat adjustability, because most of the time when you're in a kayak, especially when you're new, you're not going to be standing up a lot.
No.
So seat comfort is number one. The number two thing I look for is, where am I going to put my immediate stuff that I use throughout the day, as far as like storage. So like in my Vibe, that was one of the reasons that I liked it so much, was right just ahead of where my knees are at in the boat. There's almost like a day box that is waterproof, but it's molded in. It's not a bag.
Yeah.
And I could put my cell phone in there, like a pack of crackers if I got hungry.
Yeah.
My wallet and stuff like that. That way I didn't have to worry about that stuff getting wet, but also it was easily accessible because it was literally right there in front of me.
Right.
But when you put the lid on top of it, it had cup holders in the lid, it had measuring tape, kind of a ruler built into it. But it also had Scotty mounts, or I think it was actually, it might have been Scotty mounts, but it was either Scotty or Railblazer, but those Star Tracks things where you can kind of slide fishing rod holder in there, fish finder mount, stuff like that. It was all built in. Now, you're not going to find those features in your bare bones kayaks. You're going to have to go in that, like where you're at, that $500 plus range.
Dude, I think
to
even
find
now that's like $7 plus.
And that's one of those things you got to think about when you go into kayaks is you don't want to be one of those people that's like, oh, well, I learned to buy once, cry once the hard way. You don't want to go buy a $300 or $400 kayak, use it for a little while and realize you instantly hate it, and then try to go sell it, lose your money, and then go spend money on what you really wanted in the first place, which you probably won't, because what you really want is going to be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000.
Right.
And most people are not going to spend that on a kayak, especially getting into their first one.
Yeah.
So that's why I recommend spending just a little bit more time and effort and a little bit more money before you do make that jump into a kayak for your first purchase.
Right.
The other thing that I kind of warn people about when they're getting into the kayaks is the paddle. And like we talked about earlier, spend the money up front on a good paddle. It will last you for a long time. I've never had to replace mine. I've had it for, I think, like 6 or 7 years now. But it's going to make your kayak life a lot better.
It will.
It's not as heavy. It's not going to hurt your wrist as much if you do have to paddle a long distance. And it's not going to run the risk of breaking, especially if you get a carbon fiber paddle.
I tend to worry about it less too.
Yeah.
When it's lighter, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I can let this thing drop in the water for a minute while I get situated over here, and I know it's not going to be like 30 feet away from me where I can't get it again.
The only other thing that I kind of think about when I'm getting into a brand new kayak, or if I have somebody come to me and they're asking about getting into a kayak, the little accessory things that you don't know that you need right away will pay off big dividends later on.
Yeah.
Paddle leash and rod leashes, or at least rod floats.
Yeah.
They're not crazy expensive, but if you carry 2 or 3 rods with you, you're going to have to go buy a 3-pack of those things, and they're, $20, $30.
Yeah.
Or if you're going to get leashes for everything, those leashes are, $4, $5, $6 a piece. And even though they're annoying and they get in your way, when you go lose one of your $100 ducket rods, or when you're lucky, Lucky 13 fishing, whatever is popular now.
Dude, that's probably my other reason for disliking the kayaks a little bit.
You're going to lose stuff.
You got to have everything tethered in. I just feel like I'm covered in rope all day.
Yeah, it does. And it takes some getting used to, and you don't always fully get used to it.
Yeah.
But that's something that you got to think of. And the other side of that is waterproofing. In a boat, you can put everything that you have inside of like a tote or something and keep it dry. In a kayak, you don't have that space. So you're going to be, like in my kayak, I've got 7 or 8 dry bags from small to big. I got one for my phone, all the way up to stuff for extra clothes and food and everything else. That stuff starts to add up very, very fast.
Those bags aren't cheap.
No, a good one is not cheap.
Right.
You can get some cheap ones, but I can tell you from personal experience, they don't always work very well. So while I think that we kind of covered it, I think your barrier of entry, your price point for getting into a new kayak or a new Jon Boat are somewhat similar. I think the hidden costs are what some people don't think about and can very easily ruin your kayaking adventure
I
when
would
you get
agree with
into it. You're
that.
like, oh, I got a cheap kayak. And then you're like, well, I lost all this crap, and now I
Yeah.
got to go buy all this stuff and rebuy my stuff that I lost.
Yeah.
So that's something to think of. At the end of the day, you're pro boat, unless you just really want a kayak. It's kind of the vibe I'm getting from you.
Yeah, I don't have a use for a kayak if I'm in the lake.
If you're in a lake. Me, it's kind of either or. Mine's mostly location based. My opinion is going to be, if you're going to be lake fishing, I would probably lean more towards a Jon Boat
Right.
for a budget or first time buyer. If you're wanting to do the river thing, kayaks, or one of our upcoming topics is going to be inflatables or plastic
Yep.
boat. Those are also great options, which is a whole nother long
nother
drawn out episode we'll have to do later. But
Yep.
that's kind of where we fall. Bourbon. I already know what you're going to say, but go ahead and say it.
E.H. Taylor's awesome.
We know that.
I am getting a lot more of the cherry out of the single barrel as I went through that pour.
Okay.
Not as much of the sweetness as I got in the small batch. The small batch I'm going to consider like a gateway drug,
Okay.
right? So get you on the sweet side. You're like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Then you go into the single barrel and you're like, okay, this is like a step up my game now.
Yeah.
A little bit, the cherry, it's a more serious flavor, but not a whole lot more. It's just a tack up from the small batch.
Yeah, and I kind of feel the same way. I think the small batch is good. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
The price point is the only killer for me. I'm not going to go run around and pay $80, $90, $100 for that bottle. If I can get it for MSRP at, what, $49?
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Honestly, I don't see spending the extra money for the single barrel if you can get the small batch,
Yeah.
And like I got the same bottle you do. I'm glad that I have the bottle.
Yeah.
It's probably gonna be the only single barrel E.H. Taylor I ever buy.
Yeah. I think the single barrel is everything the small batch is. Like you said, just like one little tick on the charts higher.
Yep.
I definitely get that. I don't know any other way to describe it than that 23 flavors of Dr. Pepper feeling
yeah.
with the small batch and
You're
the single barrel. I think
you're
you get a little bit more flavors.
You're getting 26 out of the single barrel. 26
instead of
flavors.
the 23.
Yeah. So it's just barely above it.
I definitely will never spend $150 on one ever again.
Have you heard of the tornado one?
Oh, the one that
tornado
that had
survivor?
the tornado come through the
Yeah.
the Rick house and it
Ripped
destroyed a whole
ripped
bunch
the
of stuff.
roof off it, and those
Yeah.
barrels sat up there uncovered by the roof for a year or two, I think.
Are they supposed to be like spectacular, phenomenal?
It's just honestly, they probably taste like crap. To be honest with you,
Sitting in direct sunlight? I don't
Yeah.
know. That's not a thing with bourbon. They're usually in a rick house.
well, that's what I'm
Covered.
saying. That's probably why they taste like crap.
Well,
But I
maybe.
mean, but they're like, what are we gonna do with all this bourbon that we've had aging for years?
Yeah.
Let's put it in a special. It was probably cheaper for them to make a new can and labels for this, just to get those, however many barrels of it that they had
Yeah.
out, and put a new, it's a tornado survivor.
Now, I haven't been following those. Are they like crazy expensive?
You can't find them anymore.
Oh,
yeah,
they're just-
that was years ago, I think.
I heard about it. I'm not big into the
It's,
Buffalo Trace fanboy.
apparently, if you go
world.
to the Buffalo Trace Distillery, they have almost like a little cellar on display with like thick glass in front of it all,
Okay.
and they'll show you all their different stuff throughout the years, and the tornado blends in there.
Nice.
But I haven't actually seen it on a shelf or anything like that. So
Before we close this out, I did forget. I wanted to give one shout out to the shirt company that I'm wearing, Twitch Paws.
Yeah.
I was at a show down in South Georgia, and it's a funny story. This is a story I was going to tell you earlier. I was walking through all the booths and stuff at this little fishing show or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was looking at their shirts, and I was like, oh, they got some cool shirt designs. But they were like, I was thinking in my head, like, Twitch Paws, it's got to be like a bass fishing thing.
Yeah.
And the guy come walking up to me. He's like, you like the shirts? I'm like, yeah, they're cool. Just not really into bass fishing anymore, and I don't want to buy one because I don't want to feel like I'm supporting bass fishing because that's horrible. And he was like, bro, I'm not bass fisherman. Twitch Paws is like, look, all my logos and stuff are pop R's.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's like a bass fishing lure, right? He was like, no, dude, I'm an inshore, like, intercoastal waterway fisherman, and we
Yeah.
use those for specks and reds, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, so you're not supporting bass fishing.
So you're not a loser. That's what you were thinking, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, no. He's like, yeah, some people buy them because they bass fish, but he's like, that's not what my brand's about.
Yeah.
You know, we did the offshore stuff and the inshore and the intercoastal. And I'm like, oh well, hell, if that's the case, then let me buy a T-shirt from you.
I'll take two.
So I ended up talking to the owner, and I'm assuming it's his wife. I hope I'm hoping that's life. We'll just call her life partner. His life partner. They were both really really cool people. I don't often give out shout outs for clothing companies, but I bought a couple of shirts and then I got a couple more that I'll have to show on another podcast. But they're a really cool website. They were super super nice. It's all locally made. UPF 50 plus on this shirt, and it's in my favorite camo, Bottomland. Yeah. So if you're in the mood for some different kind of fishing shirts, definitely check out Twitch Paws. They got a website. I'll leave a link down in the description if you're on YouTube, so you can check them out. They were super nice people. It's nice to meet local people that do cool stuff for the fishing industry outside of bass fishing.
Edit that out, please.
Nope, I'm not editing that out.
Thank you for listening to the Drain Plug podcast. If you made it this far into the podcast on YouTube, please comment in the comment section with the American flag emoji so we know you made it this far.
Yes, we want to know that you made it through the whole episode.
Just curious. If you're on any other platform, please rate the podcast. That does help us out a lot. And don't forget to visit tbnation.net. A lot of the things that we talked about today and in a lot of our podcasts, you can be found or be seen on tbnation.net. So,
yep. And we got some upcoming episodes where we're going to be talking about some new products that are going to be launching soon in the inflatable plastic boat world. So
for now, one of the newer products is the shallow water anchor, the manual and the electric one. So
yep, we talked about those. Those are really awesome. Check those out. tbnation.net. It's the only place you can find them right now.
Don't forget your drain plug, guys.
Don't ever forget your drain plug.